Okay, so I want to talk about something real quick. So I just finished watching, and I could not watch, a video that was done by a police body cam, about an arrest being made for a speeding offense. I believe it was in Baltimore, US. And out the car come these two ladies, for lack of a better word, one younger, one older. Transpires that one is the mother of the other, or vice versa. And there's a bunch of officers there. The scene escalates, etc. And there's a terrible smell in the air. The officers end up opening one of the pieces of luggage found in the vehicle. The vehicle, by the way, was violating every law available. It was speeding, unregistered, uninsured. Person driving had no driver's license. All sorts of problems. They open the bag. And they find, long story short, 2 corpses of children. And some of the officers absolutely lose their minds for obvious reasons. Well, not so obvious, I suppose, but for reasons I can empathize with, put it that way. Some are more composed, some less so. So then they arrest these women. One of them starts running away. They stop her. They arrest her. And then they drag him to the precinct. And then the video cuts to the following, let's call it, scene, where the younger woman of the two, who was driving, is being interrogated. No, actually, the older woman first is being interrogated. And at some point, the officer... It's very evident this woman says things that are so... She's so incapable of lying with any degree of finesse or skill that she's digging her grave with every word that comes out of her mouth. She's also very talkative. Both of them are. I mean, they've obviously been caught red-handed, right? The officers are trying to determine what's going on. Is this a double child murder, etc.? Who the culprit is, and so on. The 2 women are trying to cover the situation, but in an incredibly clumsy fashion. And at one point, there's this peculiar situation in which the older woman is asked by the officer if she knows anything about the children, and he uses the plural for children, and she responds with both, right? Meaning that she acknowledges that there are 2 children that are dead. So, theoretically speaking, she was denying everything, so obviously she couldn't have known how many corpses were found, that sort of thing. And as I'm recovering from the content of seeing, because it's all a little bit too real. Anyway, as I'm recovering from the content of seeing, there's one thing that popped into my mind, a very peculiar analogy, very peculiar syllogism, a parallel, which is, I remembered my father. Now, my father's not a criminal at all, nothing to do with this. But my father has severely degenerative dementia, meaning he is incapable of thinking, certainly with any level of intelligence. And the one question that I've been grappling with myself is a strange one, which is, definitionally speaking, is my father still human? Now, the actions that these 2 women have done, I don't know who, I don't know to what degree, etc. It doesn't matter. They're obviously accomplices, and I think I'm being vague enough that nobody can argue that I'm in contempt of any legal proceeding here or anything like that. I'm not giving any details at all, and I'm not going to put any description to this video at all. But basically, the question that I started asking myself is, are these people human? Because there's always this peculiar adage, right? that there is stupidity and then there's evil. And the two kind of tend to cause very serious issues in a relatively similar way, right? And Occam's razor states that don't attribute to evil that which can be attributed to stupidity. And over the years, I've been starting to seriously doubt this position, but not in the sense that seems obvious, meaning I don't think his conclusion is incorrect. I think that his conclusion is poorly framed. Fundamentally speaking, is there any difference between stupidity and evil? In a sense, yes, because evil can occur with intelligence, or evil can the two aren't exactly, they aren't necessarily connected, right? But stupidity will lead to these problems frequently. Like, essentially, stupidity causes issues to everybody all the time, including the individual, let's say, who is being stupid, and the people around them. And obviously most of the issues are harmless, like, for example, breaking something or whatever. Harmless is obviously a word I'm using very liberally here, because breaking something is definitionally not harmless. Harm has been caused. Or, slowing down the progress of somebody else, for example. Say if you're trying to apply for some document from the government that you're forced to because government works that way, and you find yourself somebody who clearly seems to be slow at the till as they are helping you obtain this document, and they'll be slow. They'll, for example, take breaks because they don't have the intelligence to have empathy for the people that are waiting there for their services. They're trying to move on with their lives while the government desperately rakes them across the coals in order to move on with something. I don't know, you need a permit or whatever it is. And this is just an example. But the same example could be in a private setting as well, in a store or whatever. It's just that the private setting will tend not to make this work. If you underperform in a private setting, you're going to get removed in one way or the other. So I have a suspicion that stupidity is much more damaging, both in micro and macro ways, to the people around. Right? Now, I'm not about to suggest that there needs to be some kind of cleansing of stupidity. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just grappling with a question that is essentially an extension of this one. Right? I also, obviously, am stupid compared to others. It's a relative question, right? Somebody with an IQ much higher than my own, of which I'm sure there are plenty, I'm not particularly sharp, will find me obnoxiously dim, I would imagine. I make mistakes. I cause all sorts of issues. I try to employ values to own my mistakes, own up to my mistakes. But I'm sure there's many of them that I haven't, again, out of basically lack of awareness, if you will. Okay? Now, not to my knowledge, but that's very much part of the problem. So, what if we take, let's say, stupidity as a value, as a stat, let's imagine it, right? And even though it's obviously a negative stat because it's absence of intelligence, but let's reverse it just for a thought experiment, and let's say that we start increasing it and increasing it and increasing it, and we get to a weird point, example, my father, in which I don't know that it's arguable that my father is human. I mean, he's obviously human, he's got 2 legs, 2 arms, etc., etc., etc. That's not what I'm saying, though. Is this soul inside of him? I don't know. Is a soul a thing? I don't know. But it's impossible to have a conversation. It's impossible to get information to go from point A to point B. It is impossible to leave him unrestrained, otherwise he will destroy something by trying, in goodwill. I don't think he means anything bad. I don't know that he's capable of meaning. Anyway, so these women who have participated in some way in this awful crime, dug their own hole so deep it's impossible to crawl out of, though I'm sure they'll figure out a way because government will help them. They did something evil, obviously. But it is so evident to me that these women, these two women in this particular example, are slightly more mentally capable than a household pet or something. That's obviously an exaggeration, but there is a point to this. Like, what is the point of any of this? Why does this exist? Why is there a whole machinery all around this? Why is it not palatable to discuss this in an open way? If an individual had capability of discrimination and freely move around and refuse to associate with anybody they don't want, etc., etc., that includes in business world, etc., I think this problem would solve itself much more quickly, I suspect. But it is impossible. We are, by law, forced not to discriminate, not to essentially say, I do not think this individual is a human. I think this individual is something else. They have some elements of humanity, I suppose. But then again, so does my dog. I don't have a dog. Chickens. There you go. Right? They're clearly alive. They walk about. They recognize me. They do me a favor. I do them a favor back. But there's no level of me thinking a chicken is human, right? And by now there is kind of very little level of me thinking my father is human. So by extension, why are these individuals who have committed this absolutely astonishingly revolting crime that is leading to grown men essentially preying on the spot to try and cope with it? Or how this squalor, this filth, this clear and total stench of failure. Right? Apparently the younger woman talking to the officer was explaining how she was prostituting herself when somebody dropped off her children at her place so they could watch that occur, or in the act or something. Of course, there's no way to know if this woman's telling anything true at all, right? But the fun thing is that I don't actually... pardon my glibness, or my crassness, I should say. The bemusing thing is how is this entire structure occurring? Why is this individual allowed... strange word, allowed. I'm worried that I myself am maybe thinking tyrannically now. But I'll finish the thought. Why is this individual allowed to live among people? This isn't a person. Is this a person? I don't think this is I don't think this is human. I don't know what it is, because it's so similar to a human. But this isn't a human. I mean, obviously, if the justice system works, this will be solved relatively quickly, because this type of behavior would be severely discouraged. And, I mean, I'm not going to go into detail because I do not know what is sayable on YouTube, right? But, severely discouraged in the most extreme of ways, shall we say. I mean, this problem needs to be solved in this particular case. Obviously, I am not advocating or suggesting that there should be some kind of a priori machinery to get rid of the terminally stupid. That's not what I'm saying. But the fact that by law one isn't allowed to discriminate over whatever criterion one wants, including criteria that correlate with this stupidity. It is so patently and obviously wrong that this is impossible to do. But it's a really morally knotting up question for me. Are these people human? Are people who come to, I don't know, say live near you and clearly behave in ways that are dangerous to the people around? Constant fights and screaming and damage and awful behaviors and prostitution and drugs and crime, etc. around you. Why should anybody accept this? Why should anybody be forced to bear with it. It doesn't seem right. I have no solutions, I just have questions. But yeah, my conclusion at the moment, and it's a very tentative one, is that these people are not human. So why should it be treated? Should they be seen or treated as humans? If a dog bites my baby's face off, I don't really think about it too much, do I? I mean, in terms of how would I would react. I don't think the dog gets a trial, is my point. I really don't know. But this entire thing has upset me and hit me in a much more intimate place than I expected it would. There's this not only metaphorical but very physical in this case stench of injustice for all involved. Of course, the victims, the physical victims first. But what, I mean, without wishing again to be crass, what would their prospects in life be when surrounded by that level of squalor? Would they have ever become human? I don't know. I'll leave it here.